Your Honor, Mr. Murdaugh agrees with the state's rendition concerning the plea agreement. He has executed that plea agreement. We would also withdraw our motion for recusal so we can proceed with you being the judge on this matter. I think that's all I would say prior to you having the colloquy with Mr. Murdaugh. Jim?
Mr. Griffin, any comment at this point?
No, Your Honor, I have nothing further to add.
Mr. Murdaugh, you've heard what Mr. Waters has stated. Do you agree with the statements he has made?
Yes, sir.
And do you wish to withdraw your formally entered plea of not guilty and plead guilty to each and every one of these charges?
I do.
You, your lawyer, and the prosecutor have negotiated a sentence in this matter that's been recited by Mr. Waters. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And where there's a negotiated sentence, either I will accept the plea, guilty plea, and give you the exact sentence that you, your lawyer, and the prosecutor have negotiated, or I will not accept your guilty plea. Do you understand that?
I do, yes, sir.
And would you like for me to accept the guilty plea and impose the negotiated sentence?
Yes, sir, I would.
And because these cases, various counts are venued in various counties, Orangeburg County, Hampton County, Colleton County, Bamberg County, Allendale County, I think that in addition to Beaufort, do you wish to waive venue from those counties to have the case heard here in Beaufort?
I do.
Is there any question in your mind as to whether or not you wish to proceed with this guilty plea?
No, sir, there's no question in my mind.
Do you believe you've had enough time to think about it?
Yes, sir, I do.
Are
Had a
you
long
set?
time to think about it.
I can imagine. Do you believe that you've had effective representation by Mr. Harpootlian and Mr. Griffin?
Absolutely.
Now, this plea agreement includes a provision providing for a waiver of appeal and waiver of filing any post-conviction relief, as well as ordering restitution. You have reviewed those provisions and are fully informed and agree with those provisions.
I am, yes, sir.
Under the Victim's Bill of Rights, the court must ensure that the Victim's Bill of Rights have been complied with. The state is well aware of that, as well as your lawyers. And the victims have the right to be heard prior to the official imposition of any sentence or the official acceptance of a guilty plea. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
And so it's the intent of the court, assuming a factual basis is established by Mr. Waters or Mr. James, that the court will accept this guilty plea contingent upon the Victim's Bill of Rights being satisfied. Therefore, any sentencing will take place at a subsequent hearing, which will be on November 28th at 10 o'clock. Do you understand that?
It'll be when, sir?
November 28th.
Oh, yes, sir.
Yeah, Tuesday.
I understood it wouldn't be today. Yes, sir. I understand that.
All right. And understanding all that has been stated up to this point, How do you plead?
I plead guilty, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you. You can be seated, and we'll hear from Mr. Waters.
Thank you, Your Honor. And again, I plan to be somewhat brief today. It is a lot to get through, and will be more detailed as to the specific mechanisms in which these schemes were conducted at the proceeding on November 28th. But we all know, Your Honor knows, of course, having done the trial, the murder trial that we did back in January and February and March, about Mr. Murdaugh and his family legacy, his family power, his family influence, and the influence that he exercised as a respected and powerful plaintiff's lawyer throughout the state, but particularly here in the 14th Circuit. And Your Honor is, of course, aware that after September of 2021, it was reported, of course, the firm announced that they had uncovered that Mr. Murdaugh had allegedly been stealing funds from clients, and that led to a whirlwind state grand jury investigation that started to uncover a decade-long course of conduct of stealing from clients. And I want to, first of all, I want to give thanks to the team that I have here, many of whom you see sitting next to me, those that you saw at the murder trial who have done such Herculean work on this particular case. I have my co-counsel here, Johnny James, as well as co-counsel John Metters, and our forensic accountant, Carson Burney, who did excellent work on this case as well. But I also have Ryan Kelly here from SLED, who's just one of the many SLED agents who worked so very hard on this particular case. In order to delve through this morass of documents and financial transactions to ultimately paint the picture of what happened and what Mr. Murdaugh did and what he is now here admitting in the guilty plea that he actually did. But I want to say this, that the other people that I need to thank that is so important were these victims. And I can tell you, Your Honor, that at the beginning of this case, when I first got involved in late August of 2021, and we found out about these allegations and we started to investigate these financial crimes, and I sat down with some of these initial victims and asked them to tell their story, asked them to go in front of the state grand jury and testify and tell their story. And I heard over and over again, Mr. Waters, you don't know who you're messing with. I have to live there. And there was a palpable fear among those victims, in particular the initial ones, about coming forward. And I told them, I said, you're not going to be alone, but we're going to pursue this to its conclusion, but I can't tell your story without you. And to a man and a woman, those victims, as I sat at a conference room table and looked them in the eye and had those conversations, agreed to come forward because that was the only way that this kind of abuse of the judicial system could be exposed. It's the only way that change could happen. It is the only way that we can ensure that this courtroom and all the other state courtrooms, of which those of us judges and lawyers and law enforcement officers and staff are part of, that it doesn't happen again, that it's not abused in this fashion again. And so I want to thank them, because that really showed true courage. And as the ball started rolling, more and more victims came forward, more and more became willing to tell their story. And as I talked to all of those individuals before they testified, the one thing, the one word that came out over and over again was trust. Was trust. It's what I heard over and over again. And I think that's the heart of this case. It is the trust that comes with having that law license on the wall. It is the trust that comes with being part of a powerful family. It is trust that comes with building a powerful practice. But it is also that trust that comes with the fact of how these schemes typically worked. And the way they worked is that when Alex Murdaugh would bring those individuals in, to sign the paperwork, to look at a disbursement sheet that had out all the various disbursements that were coming from these cases. In most instances, he was still handing them a really big check. And it was easy for him. It was so easy for him to smooth talk and fast talk them through these disbursement statements because he's handing them that big check. And what they didn't realize was that at the same time, he was taking money from them, sizable portions of money from them, behind his back. And I think, as we develop this case, that ultimately what it really boiled down to was such a sense of entitlement and lack of accountability that Mr. Murdaugh felt he was entitled to that money. And so he took it. We've detailed before how Mr. Murdaugh had some financial difficulties that started in the recession back in the late 2000s. And he had some financial difficulties, but after that he had some big cases, and his partners and those around him thought that those big cases, from which he generated large amounts of fees, sometimes 7 figures of fees, that he had gotten everything right. But he hadn't, because his insatiable desire for money meant that not only was he taking 6 and 7 figure fees, not only was he borrowing at very favorable rates from the bank, but he also was stealing from these clients on top of it. And the first one that's indicted by the state grand jury occurred in December of 2011. And that was from Natasha Thomas and Hakeem Pinkney. And those would be the crimes that are in 2022 GS 4701 and 02. And ultimately, he was able to steal from them with his first scheme. And that first scheme would be that he would have on the disbursement sheets, and those disbursement sheets are where it has the settlement and it takes out the attorney's fees and all the legitimate expenses and where all the money's going, and then the net result, the net amount that's going to the client at the bottom. It's an accounting of all how that money's being dispersed, that money that is going into his trust account that he holds in trust for those very clients. And the procedure is that you get those clients to go through that, you get them to sign it, which he didn't always even go through it with them, but the ones he did, he would put on there, in the initial scheme, he would put on disbursements to Palmetto State Bank. And these disbursements to Palmetto State Bank were easy to talk through very quickly. Staff didn't pick up on it because they looked legitimate. It was not uncommon for Palmetto State Bank to sometimes loan money or to have claims. And so it was easy for that to look legitimate. And again, everyone from the clients to the people that worked in the firm, the people that were his staff, trusted him. They were not going to question what Alex Murdaugh said to do. And so that's how the first one went down. Natasha Thomas, there were checks made out from the trust account, made out just to Palmetto State Bank. And the first one was for $325,000. That was in December of 2011. There was another one that should have gone for the benefit of Hakeem Pinkney that was made out to Palmetto State Bank, and that's $309,581.46. And once he had those checks made out to Palmetto State Bank, he would then get those checks personally, or take those checks and take them over generally to Russell Lafitte at Palmetto State Bank. And then Russell Lafitte would willingly and happily then convert those monies on a PMPED trust account check made out to Palmetto State Bank and convert those to checks, to transactions that ultimately would go to pay the personal debts of Alex Murdaugh or into his accounts or to pay other debts that he had essentially converted for personal use.